All right, welcome to this edition of the Photo Bros. Today we're going to be unboxing the new D780.
That's right. Let's not waste any time. We'll get right to it. First looks, they have the new remarketed box like they do with the Z series. We've got your manuals, your warranty card.
You've got your USB cable, which is kind of the new model, right?
Yeah, it's the new. I believe it's the USB-C.
The ENL15B battery, which is in the D850 and the Z series cameras, so it's got the newer battery style.
You got your typical Nikon camera strap.
Charger, of course, and charger
Plug.
to go in it. And you've got your viewfinder cover.
For long exposures.
All right,
so we'll put those back in there.
Yeah, good call.
And we'll get the camera out here. Box that up.
All right, so a direct comparison here. So as you can see, first and foremost, probably one of the main features that you notice right away is the top where the shoe is. The shoe has changed color. It looks like they might have used a little different type of a metal or just coated it with something. And they also took away the flash.
Yep, so yeah, they got rid of the pop-up flash because they improved the weather sealing of the 780. So, that's always one of the weak points is having a pop-up flash. If you look at other camera systems, they've done the same thing where they've removed that pop-up flash to maintain the weather sealing.
Looks good. Aesthetically, the mode dial is slightly changed. There's, a little bit of kind of like a flat matte black finish over it. It's kind of nice. They rounded it off. Looks like it might be just a little smoother.
Similar to what they have with the Nikon Z, I believe. It has kind of that same look.
They've moved the ISO button, which is really nice. I like that on the D850. The ISO button is no longer in the bottom left corner. It's up top. Functionality-wise, that's much easier to adjust on the fly, so it's a great positioning. They also looks like they have moved. The live view has been moved. So the live view used to be in the bottom corner of the camera, and now, as you can see here, it is moved to the top of the camera body. So probably just for more functionality and ease of use.
Yeah, more intuitive to kind of press your thumb up towards where you're, up towards the top left versus, it just seems right.
It does.
Yes.
It does. And the info button they've moved over. The info button was on the left, and now the info button is on the right. And you can still function this camera with back button focus and all the great features of the other one as well. So this is a little bit heavier.
Yep. It's a little bit heavier, and that's more or less because of the actual design. They used a composite magnesium alloy design with the 750, and they're using a full magnesium alloy chassis with the 780.
Yeah, the 750 had a little bit of carbon fiber built into it, and this is just solid magnesium alloy on this one.
And again, that goes back to the rugged factor with the weather sealing. They want to make sure they maintain the integrity of the camera, very much like their D850.
The Zs.
Yep, it's kind of the same thing.
Yep.
You want to, since everything is kind of going in this direction of ruggedness and weather sealing, it just gives you that extra edge when you're shooting in environments.
They've updated the screen, so if we kind of just focus on this camera now, they have updated the screen on it too, so it's about double the resolution as the old screen, and it's a touch screen. Yep. So you can touch autofocus while you're looking at it from a distance, which is great. That's a feature that's in a lot of their other newer cameras, so people who are used to shooting that now, that feature is now involved in the D780.
Yep.
It's a great feature.
It is a great feature. Going from there, we could talk about the sensor size.
Let's go for it, yeah.
The sensor, they've moved from a 24 megapixel sensor to a 25, and it's become a backside illuminated sensor. So, with the addition of a newer processor, that's going to mean better low light shooting capabilities, which the ISO range has been changed as well, Ken?
It has been. It's now jumped up. So it used to be the native before was up to 12,800. The new native is now 51,200. And they're both, it's expandable, of course. Before, the old one was expandable to 51,000, basically, and this new one is over 204,000. So it's quite a big jump. It's also an X-Speed 6 processor, so it's jumped twofold from the X-Speed 4 on the old one. So that's a huge difference. Yeah, what about that long exposure, though?
Well, long exposure, with probably the addition of a new processor, you can kind of change some things. So your minimum shutter speed can change, your long exposure can change. And now they're able to add, instead of doing a 30-second long exposure, you can do 900 seconds, which translates into 15 minutes of
That's
long
a long
exposure.
time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't run long exposures that long. Typically, when we're doing night sky stuff, I think the longest was 45 minutes that I've done personally. But that kind of gives you an edge in
Oh, by
those
far.
low light situations. You can kind of mess around instead of shooting at a higher ISO, like 1600 at 30 seconds. You can now do maybe ISO 100 at 15 minutes, depending on what your f-stop is going to be.
And it also eliminates the use of a shutter, so you don't have to use a shutter release. So you could put it on timer, and since you can go all the way up to 15 minutes, it really opens that window, unless you're doing, astrophotography where, like Justin's talking about those 45-minute exposures. 15 minutes is a really long time. It will help, if you just need a 1-2 minute exposure, you're well within the range right here without having to carry a remote with you and all that. You could just set it to the timer and rock and roll.
Yeah, so just adds a little bit of functionality there. And on top of the minimum shutter speed that we're talking about, they increased the maximum shutter speed. So now instead of being 1/4000th of a second with the D750, now we're at 1/8000th of a second. So
sports shooters, action, photography.
Or even yourself, you're big and keen on the high-speed sync. So having 1/8000th of a second on a bright sunny day means that we can shoot wide open and just get that one extra little sliver of cutting out that sliver of light. So,
and Justin and I, being both wedding portrait photographers together, it's one of those things too where, on your wedding days that you're shooting, on those bright sunny afternoons, being able to utilize that high speed is very important with portraits like Justin was just describing, and the dual memory card slots. And there's something unique about these new SD cards, right?
Yes, there is. So they're using the UHS-2 memory cards, and that's in both slots, not just one, like some other camera systems. So that means that if you're running video or if you're doing high-speed capture with like the sports mode and continuous shooting, you can now use cards that are faster than 200 megabytes a second write speed, which is a huge advantage for videographers and sports shooters alike. Which, going to that point, they increase the continuous drive from 6.5 frames a second to 12 frames a second. So now they've opened up this camera, to sports shooters. And that's, again, going back to the weather sealing and the better processor and now 12 frames per second. Now we're kind of opening up the 750 to more than just your standard portrait shooters or wedding shooters. You're opening up to sports photographers as well.
Yeah, the 780 is going to be a phenomenal camera in that regard. And one thing about it too is when you start using these faster SD cards and compact flash cards and all these different things that have the faster rate, when you're doing workflows with weddings and sports, you have a lot of images. Well, they also transfer to your computer much faster. It also keeps your buffer from filling up. A lot of times people think their camera is slow because they'll hold down the shutter and all of a sudden the buffer will fill. A lot of times it's because the camera's actually outperforming your SD card. People kind of go, well, why do I need to spend $200, $300 on an SD card? Well, part of that is so your camera can perform properly, believe it or not. 9 times out of 10, would you say, Justin, people come in, they think that their camera's got something wrong with it, and you realize you just don't have a fast enough SD card for what you're trying to do with it.
It's actually quite commonplace. You'll see a lot of people come in and like, oh, my camera's too slow, or I'm not getting the shots I want. Well, when you're using a card that's 40 megabytes a second and you're trying to shoot sports, and your camera can do maybe 7+ frames a second. Well, guess what? You're being held up by your memory card. And again, that's why there's a different offering of memory cards for people out there, and there's different cameras for people out there, because that way there's always a good, better, best. So it's always making sure, okay, what can my camera do? What's the ceiling of potential for operation? And then finding a memory card that works hand in hand with what you want to do with it.
They also have Bluetooth in it.
Yeah.
We've got our nose pulled up. It's got Bluetooth capability, which is great. You can transfer your images directly to your Nikon Bridge app right on your phone. That's really cool.
Yep, and it's not getting rid of Wi-Fi. It's still there, but Bluetooth is kind of the new connectivity that they're using with most camera systems.
And because they're using that new ENL-B battery instead of the old ENL 15, this 15B actually has approximately 1.5 to 2 times the battery life of the old battery. It's
almost about, they measured it about 2,300 shots, where the other one was about 1,200. So, when you're able to open up, 2,000 shots, right, on one battery, if you're a wedding shooter, that's or a sports shooter, that's most of the day of what you're shooting. I mean, on average, how many shots would you say you take when we shoot weddings?
Anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 plus.
And I know I'm around 1,500, give or take.
Yep.
So it's that means all day on one battery. Now, it's always good
Yep.
to carry more than one, and especially if you're shooting in cold conditions. We live in West Michigan,
Right.
so the temperatures will vary. So it's always good to carry at least 1 or 2 extra batteries with you, no matter what you're doing, because you'll forget to charge them. The weather will sap the charge out of them. So,
and also remember, when you have your new cameras, you want to maximize your battery life. Make sure that your playback time on your screen is low, and also the brightness that you set your camera on. So all those things affect your battery life and the amount of battery time you get out of your battery.
And I could also add to that, your Wi-Fi mode does take away from your shooting capability. So
yeah, if you forget and you leave it on and it doesn't have an auto off, it's going to affect it.
And I believe Nikon has airplane mode on their cameras for Wi-Fi. So you can turn airplane mode on, which is going to save more of your battery if you're not using Wi-Fi transfer for any reason.
And I think we've covered most of the main features of it.
I think the one thing we did miss was we did talk about the speed. It was the autofocus points.
Oh yeah, it has a new autofocus point system.
Yep. So there's 51 autofocus points, just like it does like it has in the predecessor. But now they've added 15 cross points, which means that when you have cross points, we talked about this in our review with the EM5 Mark III from Olympus. Cross points allow you to nail those. It's looking for vertical and horizontal lines. So that just means when you have a lack of contrast day, you're going to be able to, the camera's looking for vertical and horizontal lines, which will help with autofocus.
Overall feel so far, we haven't been able to shoot it, but I think this is going to be an excellent wedding and / maybe even sports photographer workhorse. I mean, this is a durable build camera. Mm-hmm. Nikon has always been known for their very high quality, very durable cameras, weather sealed, very strong, but that is an attractive feature to have that dual memory card slot. I know for a lot of photographers, especially wedding photographers.
And that's been a big win and loss in the categories as of late. With the Nikon Z series, a lot of people are like, it needs dual memory card slots. That was always a nice thing. Sony didn't have that with their initial A7 series cameras, but they have added it since. So it's always nice to be able to back up your photos as a wedding shooter. As wedding shooters, I like to copy my images on that second slot. So I'm running both a JPEG and RAW, and just cloning that card, because if one card fails, I've got that second card to fall back onto.
That's right. That's right.
So I think Ken and I are both in agreement that this is a good camera for the portrait shooter. In the retail world, whether you're doing family portraits, senior portraits, wedding photography, but adding that new edge with really pushing the sports photography, opening that up.
12 frames a second is quite fast.
Yeah,
that's a lot of frames for what you're trying to capture. I mean, you're bound to get a couple good shots in that spray of images. But using the new SD cards too is going to help you with that. You're going to be able to maintain that 12 frames a second for much longer as well.
Yeah, because the buffer is not going to fill up as fast. Correct. But again, just because you have it doesn't mean you have to use it. It's always good to pick and choose your shots, not hammer down on that shutter. Always learn to anticipate the action, anticipate the moment, and that way you're not burning unnecessary space off of your memory card.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for watching this review today. We hope it was helpful. We hope you get a chance to check out this camera. Obviously, Justin's at the camera shop. You're welcome to check it out down there, and he can fill you in with more details in person and kind of let you touch, feel, and hold it and see for yourself. It seems like a really great quality product. Really excited to see how it performs.
Yep, and perfect for any of those people who want to upgrade from their old D750.
Awesome. Till next time. See you guys later.
Keep
shooting. Thank you for watching this edition of the Photo Bros. If you enjoyed this video, please click subscribe below to watch more future videos. For all of your camera equipment and accessory needs, please contact the Camera Shop of Muskegon.